Hello everyone, welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're getting to part 3 of our Panda Express series and diving into their Kung Pao Chicken. For those keeping score, we also did their Sesame Chicken with a fun tempura batter earlier this month, as well as their discontinued General Tso's Chicken using the Kenji Lopez double frying method last month as well. Similar to their deep fried dishes, Panda's Kung Pao Chicken also prominently features the use of crunchy flash cooked veggies like bell pepper and zucchini, which should be a great opportunity to talk a little bit more about flash cooking in a wok and how to navigate that on a home range. As always, I also took a shot at my own version of Kung Pao Chicken, which is a little bit less sweet than the Panda version and also employs a few ingredients that are fairly common in Chinese cooking but not quite as commonplace in Chinese American cuisine like Panda Express. Okay, so let's get into it. For the Panda Express version, as with most of our recipes, I'm starting with some crushed and minced garlic, followed by some finely minced ginger. Give your garlic a good whack with the flat of your knife so you won't need to do much mincing, and feel free to break out your microplanes for your ginger if you do have a distaste for fine minces. Moving on to our veggies, I'm de-seeding and then large dicing a red bell pepper here. Remember to also pull out the membrane of your bell pepper too, which can cause a bitter taste if you leave it in for your final dish. Then I'm slicing up a zucchini into large slices, followed by 2 green onions. If possible, we want to be using green onions with as much of the thick white portion as possible, since we'll need it to withstand the wok heat later on. Then I'm flattening out and large dicing some chicken. As with almost all Panda dishes, we are going with white meat chicken breast again. For our chicken marinade, we're sticking pretty close to Chinese American flavors, using 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, our most important ingredient, and then a pinch of kosher salt and pepper. Then we're thickening all of this up with a teaspoon of cornstarch and letting it marinate for at least 30 minutes or up to 2 hours. Moving on to our sauce, I'm starting with 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, or plain old dry cooking sherry if you can't find this, followed by 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, a single tablespoon of toasted sesame oil, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, and 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. You'll notice a notable lack of heat or spicy elements here, which is pretty intentional. Since we are going to be toasting some dried peppers in our wok later on, these can add quite a bit of punch on their own. Then in a separate bowl, we're mixing up equal parts cornstarch and water for a cornstarch slurry, and we're ready to cook. You want to make sure that you have all of this chopping done before you start cooking, or mise en place. A wok stir fry can come together very fast, so once we start adding things to our wok, there won't be time to prep anything else. Over on our stove, we have our wok heating up as hot as possible and ready to stir fry. As always, long yao with your vegetable oil for a nice non-stick surface. Then we're adding our chicken to the wok first, leaving behind as much of the marinade in the bowl as possible to reduce moisture in our wok. Give this a toss for about 2 minutes until 80% cooked through. Then we're exercising some batch cooking technique here by removing the chicken, wiping down our wok, adding 4 more tablespoons of vegetable oil, and long yao one more time. Next, our stir fry is pretty much downhill from here. We're adding our dried peppers here first to release some capsaicin or spiciness, then adding our bell pepper and zucchini. Next, we're blooming our aromatics by clearing some surface space in the wok so that our ginger and garlic can make solid contact with the oil in the wok. Then we're giving this all a quick flash cook for 2 minutes, just long enough to keep some nice crunch with our veggies. Then we're adding back our chicken, followed by our green onions, raw peanuts, sauce, and cornstarch slurry. We're giving all of this a toss to combine for about 1 to 2 minutes, then removing from heat and finishing with some crushed red pepper flake. This was a super fun dish to dig into and learn more about some of the fundamental elements of flash cooking on a wok. The large number of ingredients in the Panda Express Kung Pao Chicken presents a whole bunch of opportunity to either undercook or overcook elements, making timing a super key element to getting this right. Add your green onions too early and they can turn to mush in your stir fry. Add your chicken too early and you can very easily undercook a sturdy veggie like zucchini in a wok flash cook. Okay, so next we're moving on to my own variation of Kung Pao Chicken, which primarily differs by making use of a few different ingredients in our sauce base to give this stir fry a little bit more depth of flavor. We're also going to take a few steps to reel back the sweetness of our Kung Pao Chicken in this variation while we play with some of these more traditional flavors, since I think the high presence of sugar in stir fries definitely originates from the Americanization of Chinese cuisine. So, for our mise en place, we're starting out pretty similar by crushing and mincing some garlic, followed by fine mincing some ginger. I'm also going to stick with some red bell pepper, mainly because I forgot to buy a yellow bell pepper. If you do have one though, I think the yellow will give a nice contrast in presentation since our sauce is going to be a little bit darker this time. Next, for our green onions, I'm separating my whites and greens this time so that I can reserve the greens as a garnish later on. I'm going for pretty large slices for my whites, then giving my greens a slice on a bias for our final garnish. Next, in lieu of zucchini, I'm going with some sweet white onion, which I meant to large dice, not slice, followed by some celery. Remember that celery has a lot of stringy bits on the exterior, so snap that stuff in half to expose those stringy bits, then pull that stuff off before chopping it. We're giving our celery a chop on a bias as well and setting all of this aside. For our chicken, I'm going chicken thigh this time for a bit of extra fat. We're going for a similar large dice though, then marinating it in 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, a pinch of kosher salt, and a teaspoon of cornstarch to help bind everything together. Moving on to our sauce, I'm incorporating a few elements here that actually borrow a little bit from our jjajangmyeon sauce that I made a few weeks back, and taking a few steps to make up for the sugar that we're leaving out of this version. We're going with black vinegar this time instead of rice vinegar, which is going to give us a slightly malted sweetness. Then I'm adding 2 tablespoons of fish sauce, which is going to give us some fermented sweetness. Next, I'm adding 2 tablespoons each of Chinese black bean sauce and Chinese spicy chili crisp, which is going to give our sauce some nice rich umami. Then I'm rounding all of this out with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and a 1/4 cup of beef stock. Over in my mortar and pestle, I'm crushing up some Szechuan peppercorn, just enough to get them to release a bit of their oil. And in a separate bowl, I'm combining equal parts cornstarch and water for our cornstarch slurry. Over on our stove, I'm adding some vegetable oil to my ripping hot wok, long yao for your non-stick surface, then we're starting by par cooking our chicken to about 80% doneness again. Be careful to keep this in motion while it cooks because the sugars in our marinade will cause it to burn if you're not careful. Then this time I'm blooming my garlic and ginger with the chicken right before I pull it out of the fire. Give the wok a wipe down, long yao, and we're moving on to our veggies. I'm starting by quickly toasting my dried peppers in the oil, then followed by my bell peppers, celery, the whites of my green onions, and peanuts. And giving this all a toss for about 2 minutes, then adding my chicken back to the wok, followed by my sauce, cornstarch slurry, and onions. You'll notice that I left my onions out until the very end because I want them to retain a little bit of crunch. If we had added them with our more durable veggies like bell pepper and celery, they would have overcooked and turned into mush. I'm finishing all of this off with some Szechuan peppercorn this time instead of red pepper flake, followed by the greens of my green onions, and we're ready to eat. I think this version of Kung Pao Chicken really elevates the dish in its depth of flavor and umami with our extra layers of fermented sauce. The fish sauce and black vinegar adds a little bit more complex sweetness than simple brown sugar, and our black bean sauce gives a little bit more contribution to umami than our panda version does. I will say that I did miss the hearty bite of zucchini squash in this version though, since the celery is pretty flavorless here. That said, hopefully the general takeaway from this is that Kung Pao Chicken is truly just a simple veggie stir fry with dried peppers and chicken in it, so you can adjust and adapt this recipe to fit whatever happens to be in your fridge. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give one or both of these recipes a try. I think we touched on a lot of the fundamental concepts of wok cooking with techniques like batch cooking and flash frying. So if you do own a wok or you are thinking of getting one, I hope this was a little bit informative or at the very least entertaining. Stick around and subscribe for some more fun Panda Express recipes. I'm working on figuring out their Beijing beef recipe right now, so hopefully that will be up here next. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and just generally be good humans to each other. Okay. See you soon.